This week we're reading The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley, otherwise known as What Else Can You Do with No Hands?
Hi readers, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine Season 2, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines of any genre. Because that's what we do now.
Want to see what's next on our TBR list? Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Instagram for a sneak peek at upcoming content or to help us pick our next book.
This is an interesting book because it is like a staple in the romantasy genre because it's older.
Yeah. I read this book before me and Jordan had a brainchild that is this podcast. So I feel like that kind of speaks to the kind of stapleness of the genre. Like even I, who am a fan fiction, smutty romance woman.
Post-2010 consumer of romantasy.
Yeah.
You have read this book.
Yeah, and I finished it.
It surprises me, though, that you have not read Beauty.
It's probably on my TBR somewhere and I just got caught up with smutty fan fiction anyways.
So for the readers whose exposure to Robin McKinley is Beauty, which I think is probably more common because
really,
yeah, it's YA and it's the writing style is way more casual, I would say.
Okay.
It's written in first person, it's much more relatable to the main character, and it's Beauty and the Beast. Like, what's not to love about that? And I feel like that was way more available to young readers early in the 2000s. Like kind of that, late Gen Z millennial age bracket.
I don't even think I've seen this cover.
Oh my God, Katie. It's so good.
Wow.
It is probably the best Beauty and the Beast retelling you've ever read, ever.
Speaking of covers, though, we need to take a moment for the cover of The Blue Sword.
Oh my God.
It is stunning, beautiful. It has it almost looks like a nebula, like the way she's drawn, and it's hand drawn. There's like an artist signature in the corner.
We're talking about the one where she's on Sun Gold or
the horse.
Sornin something, however you say the actual.
Yeah, TS
something.
Whatever
that
sound that makes.
It's beautiful. Yeah. They don't make covers like that anymore.
No, I want all of our favorite books to get a cover treatment like The Blue Sword. Because it's one of those books that you're like, fuck yeah. I want to be a girl riding a horse in the desert.
This is like homage to Horse Girls a little bit.
Oh, 100%. There is a Venn diagram of readers of this book and Horse Girls, and it's a circle.
Yeah. But so if you started with Beauty, you probably graduated to The Blue Sword afterward because it is a little bit different of a writing style. It's a little bit more formal. It's a little bit more fairy tale like.
I could see that.
Less immersive.
Because it does kind of confusingly switch perspective sometimes. Because I read this the first time, loved it, etc. But now reading for the pod, it was a little bit confusing at parts to understand whose perspective it was.
Yeah, because it's written in very early on in the beginning. It's written kind of like third person omniscient. So you get a little bit of everything. So it's to establish the framework and the groundwork of the plot. And then it kind of steers more into the heroine's perspective for the majority of the rest of the book.
Well, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. But yeah. Oh, okay. Because I don't know that I've read any other books that are third person omniscient.
I think Tamora Pierce does that a lot in her books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it's a little jarring if you're used to strictly first person.
Or the, very helpful chapter openings where it's like, this character's POV. And it's like,
my
okay.
God. Please, I hate that so much. Like, if you need a label, you're not writing right.
That's why you didn't like The Sweetest Oblivion, but
no,
that's fair.
Don't.
That's a valid perspective, I will say.
But I do have an unfair bias in that, I don't care how well written it is. If it's written in first person from the dude's perspective, I will drop it immediately.
That's fair.
I just can't get into it. It jars me.
Yeah. That's reasonable. I love hearing the guy be angry about something to do with the girl. Possessive stupidness.
Listen, don't get me wrong. I love hearing the guy's perspective. I love reading the guy's perspective from third person. Because
that's fair. That's
very common in historical romance. Regency romance switches. And a lot of times it's almost 50-50 heroine versus main character love interest.
Interesting. It is interesting too, because if Blue Sword was written more recently, I feel like we would get more of what's his name's perspective. Corlath. Yeah. Just a little bit more of like,
even his name is hot.
I honestly though, it is undeservingly like, why is your name that hot? Like that doesn't make sense. But we would get a little bit more of like why he thinks he loves Harry.
Yeah.
Harry's a girl. Not that it matters, but just like for reference.
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
That kind of leads us into like our heroine, Harry, who her full name is
we looked it up in a YouTube video. Angarad.
There's a reason she goes by Harry.
Yeah, she's like, you got me fucked up.
Let's not use that name.
Yeah. I like Harry as a heroine. I think she's kind of unique. She's not a not a usual girl character. She's just kind of like hanging out. And she's like, why do I need to wear like dresses and stuff? Like, I'm not hating on it, but that's just like not my vibe.
She's very like impartial is what she is. Like, she's like, you do you and I'll do me and I'm fine with both.
Yeah. I love her. She kind of reminds me of the books, by C.S. Lewis.
Narnia?
Yeah. How the characters in that are just kind of like, were let wild as children. And then their parents are like, you need to act better. And it's like, what? Like, I had a wild fucking childhood. Why am I going to wear dresses now? What the fuck?
I mean, that is kind of Harry, though.
Yeah.
So this takes place in a very, like, reminiscent of colonial era Britain. So the same time frame as The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
Delicious. Anyway, sorry.
Tell me more. Oh, actually, Brendan Fraser as, like, give him a darker tan and make him Corlath.
Oh, yeah. When he was younger.
Obviously.
Because I feel like I just saw a picture of him the other day and he's maybe not what I would imagine is Corlath.
He might also be a little too goofy to be Corlath.
I could see that. I get Ben Barnes vibes. The guy from...
Oh, yes. I know.
Prince Caspian.
Yeah.
Woo! One of my first crushes. That's fine.
So, colonial era Britain, but it's called very creatively Homeland.
I love that. She's like, we're not
trying
thinking about this.
Oh, didn't you see that you read this? Like, this book was written in response to...
Oh, yeah. The Sheikh, which was 1920s, 1910s, 18s.
Early 20th century, like, romance.
Yeah, except the most problematic of all romance, and the girl's an idiot, apparently. And so Robin McKinley rage wrote The Blue Sword in 6 months is like a better version of that book, the level of petty.
Which she rage wrote, like, I'm just going to do this because I'm mad. And it becomes a staple of the fantasy romance genre for all time.
I love that so much.
How skilled do you have to be as a writer to be like, fuck you, here's my hobby.
I also love that this is kind of like the OG fan fiction, but she was so confident in how much better it was that she's like, this is the new version. This is real.
I'm not going to try on these names. I'm just going to wing it as I go.
This is now canon.
Yeah. I mean, I read The Sheik because I think I had forgotten about it until you brought it up again. Yeah. But when I first read The Blue Sword, like early teenage years, I read somewhere that it was like reminiscent of The Sheik. And so I bought a copy of The Sheik and I read it. And I don't know if I enjoyed it or not because at the time I was like really swallowing these swallowing.
That was accurate word choice.
Toxic romances that just establish terrible gender norms and
Interesting. I wonder if people read that now, if they would find issues with it in the same way. Because I feel like some of these like fantasy romances that are popular, I'm like, this is so problematic. Like, this guy is a villain. He's a felon.
So it was like very much Aladdin and 1001 Nights and just this foreign mysterious land and like robes and princes and genies and stuff.
Honestly.
And so, white woman gets kidnapped by a desert prince and like he makes her part of his harem and she falls in love with him and he falls in love with her, but like he doesn't know how to process that, so he's very abusive.
That got like worse and worse.
That seems like the entire book there. So
no. And it's hard too because The Blue Sword, obviously, when your source material is problematic, like you can be just like a little bit problematic. It does have similar themes, but they do it a little bit better. Like Robin McKinley fixed some of the movie.
A lot, yeah.
Because Harry, she lives in Homeland, and then her dad dies, and then her brother, who's stationed abroad in Navarre, Daria, Damar.
Damar.
There we go. Some kind of
Yeah.
combination. He very concerningly is like, you can't just live by yourself. You need to come here with me. And she's like, wait, what? I guess. And then all of a sudden she finds herself in Damar.
It's a very, I think, relatable trajectory for a heroine because, you know, she's older. She's in her, you know, early 20s to mid 20s. So she's on the brink of spinsterhood. And so she's been allowed to be independent for, you know, most of her life. And then all of a sudden she is without an adult guardian. And so her brother has to take the reins. And she's like, oh, I mean, I'm more competent than my brother is, but sure, I'll listen to you.
I love a feral, like, woman character that was just raised by the wilds, and then they try to bring her back to society, and they're like, why isn't she doing the right thing? It's like, she is not domesticated.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's fitting because that's how the story kind of like progresses. So the history of this land is, you know, our homeland is like they're colonizing all of the like neighboring countries, but they have kind of stopped their forward movement at this border town, which is in Damar, and there's all these fucking mountains, and the mountains are populated by the hill folk, and like they cannot take over these mountains. So they've kind of resigned to this neutral territory where the hill folk, like as they're colloquially called, are ruled by the hill king, and their land is Damar.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of those like, oh yeah, we control this area. And it's like, home dog. Like,
no, you don't. You got a train that ends here.
Yeah.
Like, you're done.
Maybe on paper, but like that is unregulated areas.
And so in the meantime, there are these northern barbarians who are kind of like reminiscent of, I don't know, like...
I thought Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan. Like a little bit like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but they're in like a fantastical, mythological sense. They're like imbued, I don't know, words, with mystical powers, and they're all a little non-human.
Yeah, like demon-y.
Yeah.
I could have Lord of the Rings, like the...
Orcs.
Yeah. Like a little bit like, ooh.
So Homelanders and the Damarians are kind of aligned in the sense that they have a shared enemy, but they're not really aligned together yet. And that's the setup for the Blue Sword. So Harry is just a gently bred noblewoman. She gets sent off to this bumfuck nowhere colonial town where there's like an army garrison and like 2 women, and that's it.
Yeah, it's like 1 road and 8 buildings, and that's the town. Yeah. Do we want to talk about the 2 best friends now? They're my favorite.
They're excellent. So yeah, Harry is not settling well. She's kind of settling in the sense that she actually likes it in the desert. Like it's barren and abandoned, but somehow it speaks to her.
Yeah. And
going back to like, this is an army outpost. Like, so she is staying with like basically godparents who are part of like the diplomatic service.
I imagined like an ambassador or there's like a fancy word for him, but
like an envoy.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think there's a fancy like French word too, but yeah. Old man, mustache, bookie.
Exactly. And so she's staying with them, and she makes friends with these 2,
the only 2 other women of her age group. And the godmother is like, why don't you go hang out with those 2 like nice girls, and you guys can go out for a ride. We're gonna handle some like sus business here. That's the only way I could describe it.
That's the best description, because that's exactly how it is. And I love that Harry's reaction to like these 2 young women in the town, because they are like, yes, they're the only women in the town, but they're also just like classically beautiful. And so they're very popular with all the young army men at the garrison. And so everyone's got a crush on them. This is kind of when the omniscient narration takes over, because in the very beginning, we're trying to establish like, who is Harry? Who are all these people around her? And I feel like Robin McKinley is trying to establish that Harry, while seemingly coming across as confident and knows herself, has a lot of insecurities because she's very tall.
Preach. God, if I could just... Girl, same.
So she feels, awkward and a little out of place because she's like the same height as her brother, which I'm imagining is like in the 6 feet to 6'3" realm, which Katie.
Yep.
But so she feels all this insecurity. So when she goes to ball, she feels like her brother is forcing all of his, friends to dance with her when they really don't want to. But this is the very clever move on the author's part, as in it switches to this omniscient like in the span of like 3 sentences. And it describes how, unbeknownst to Harry, there was 2 young men in the garrison who were just enamored with her, but slightly terrified to do anything. So they both had a crush on her, and she just doesn't know anything about it. So whenever they ask her to dance, she's like, well, that's really nice of you. You don't have to. And they're like, but we really want to.
It's like, yeah, sure. My brother really paid you guys, huh? Because I feel like that kind of encapsulates Harry's character, is like she's content with herself, but it's also in this kind of uncomfortable with how tall she is. She rode horses when she was a kid. She didn't do embroidery. She wasn't stuck inside doing ladylike things. Like, it's the kind of discontent in your own skin, which I feel like is a very universal experience, but maybe magnified by the fact that she is, what's that Taylor Swift? They're all sexy babies and I'm a monster on the hill.
Oh, yeah.
100%. That's
well,
Harry.
It's like an acceptance of dissatisfaction with self.
Yeah.
And like, you're okay with being dissatisfied. It doesn't bother you anymore in the sense that it does, but you're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah. You're like, okay, well, this is just my life, but gross.
Wow, that was, I mean, I'm a diehard Swiftie, so you really spoke to my soul on that one.
Well, I heard that line and I was like, okay, I didn't think I needed therapy, but apparently I do. Just minding my own business, driving my car. It's like, whoa, man, I am a monster on the hill. All 6 feet of me, but that's fine.
Oh my God.
But I just love that Lady Amelia, who's the godmother, she's like, okay, just like go hang out with your friends. All the men are in a hubbub because Corlath came down randomly and he's like, I need to talk to you. And they're like, who the fuck? The Hill King? He's never come here before.
Yeah, so in case you're wondering, Corlath, the Hill King, so hot. Like Shivraeth hot.
Oh, yeah. They're
different types.
Yeah. Same vibe.
Yeah.
And Shivraeth is developed more, but Corlath with like a couple extra paragraphs could be up there.
Yeah. Well, it's because he's so angry all the time.
Wow.
Maybe that's an insight we didn't need to talk about.
No, I don't want to know that. Again, the therapy thing. Leave me alone.
Oh my God.
Let me listen to the radio.
Okay, so, Harry wakes up in the morning. She's got insomnia, by the way. And she's like, I'm going out for a ride with my friends. Okay, great, because the Hill King is coming and we're going to have like a lunch, like a fancy lunch with him. We don't know what he wants, but, we're going to go with it. So she goes out riding, she comes back, and she's desperately searching the horizon for any sign of like these desert horses, because supposedly the hill people ride amazing horses. Think Arabians, but like the size of a Clydesdale.
Yeah. I also love that the friends are 100% on board with this. They're like, so if we stay within like 450 feet of the main fort, we can see them on the horizon and we're not going to miss out on the drama. We can just like loop around real quick. We are staying. We are not missing this.
Because, yeah, 100%. If I were out right, I'm like, goddamn right, I want to see the Hill King right in.
I love it because it's such a universal experience of like, you want to be close enough that you're not missing anything out, but they're like, go play outside. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to technically be outside, but I'm going to be right outside the front door.
But they see nothing as they're riding. And so they ride back into town and like they park their horses at the mansion.
Sweat.
So Harry, like, dismounts her horse.
Parks him.
And a stable boy runs over. And as she's like exchanging the reins with the stable boy, she sees the front doors of this mansion fly open and out strides this, I don't know,
hot, angry man
wearing robes, like half his face is covered. You can only see his eyes. And
Sorry.
She makes eye contact with him and she doesn't look away. And he keeps making eye contact with her. And his eyes are described as this burning like gold, like on fire. And she's like, I feel a little on fire too.
I love that she has a whole ass existential crisis during this part. She's like, we are making eye contact.
Yeah. And she's just frozen there with her horse. And so the Hill King strides down the steps and like leaps onto his horse, like no hands.
No hands. Anyway, sorry.
What else can he do with no hands? Sorry.
Corlath, but honestly.
Yeah.
Fair.
And leaps onto his desert horse and he and his, group of riders gallop away. And Harry is left in a tizzle.
Yeah, titillated. She's like, what just happened? Because I think there's even a line, too, that she was like, you could tell that he wasn't comfortable making direct eye contact with a woman. He's like, why the fuck is she so tall? Like, damn, girl. And Harry's just like, where am I? Why are you hot?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. And then everyone's confused. They're like, he just came in here and then he left.
But before he left, there was one Homelander man in the party who kind of like at the very last minute, like runs down the stairs and like extends his hand to Corlath and says something in the old tongue. So there's 3 languages that are mentioned throughout this book, which is like Homelander, there's the hill folks like common tongue, and then there's like the old tongue, which is like very few people even understand. And like if you use it, you're like quoting something that you still don't know what it means.
Yeah.
And so that's what this Homelander did. He like runs out, extends his hand, and Corlath like looks at this man like the way you would look at like a slug on the ground. All right, you're trying, fine.
I will not smush you. I'll walk around you.
Yeah.
But...
And so they kind of shake hands or like the equivalent thereof, and then Corlath rides away. But that was Colonel Jack.
Yeah, Dedham?
I don't know.
His name's Jack.
Very English.
Yeah. He's one of the quintessential kind of kooky, maybe takes his work a little bit too seriously. And it's like, okay, it's not that serious, man. And he's like, no, I have read every single book ever written. It is that serious. And it's like, okay, homie, like, let's calm down.
Tone it down a little bit. But he's been stationed at this outpost for like the
40 years or something.
Yeah, and so he's kind of like gone native.
Yeah. It's at the point that they're like, you just retire there.
Yeah. But he and Harry really relate to each other because Harry feels at home in the desert and so does Jack. And so they kind of form this bond of like, we're not going to talk about this, but like, we know everyone hates it out here, but we don't. Yeah. And that's weird.
Yeah. I think it's just them in this club and like one other person.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how, we meet, this whole party of diplomatic people because, Harry's brother is also involved in the negotiations that fail and Corlath. And so it all kind of resolves and people are a little unsettled because basically what Corlath had ridden into town to ask for, which was, hey, Homelanders, can you like lend your army that's stationed here because the evil Northlanders are coming to invade and they're going to go through your mountain pass to get to us. Can you help us out? And Homelanders were like, not our problem.
Yeah. It's kind of shades of, what is it, like World War II? Not to be a history moment here. Put some respect on it. Damn. Like World War II, where you'd have like a French general in charge of like an American yada yada.
Oh, how it took the U.S. like 4 fucking years to actually join the fight.
Yeah. That's shades of this, because I think the Homelanders are like, well, yeah, we'll help you if like, you put your people under our control. And Carlos like, what the fuck? Like, why would I? No.
He's like, I'm a fucking king. No.
No, thank you. And they're like, well, there's nothing that we can do for you. And it's like, okay, well, you're gonna die.
Yeah. So Corlath is riding away, and this is where we get this very unique start of perspective switching. So kind of this first few chapters, it's omniscient with like shades of Harry's perspective.
Yeah.
And then it dramatically switches. And then we're in Corlath's brain. And so as he's riding away from this Homelander colony, he's like, why the fuck am I still thinking about that weird Homelander girl who's oddly tall? Like, she actually was able to hold my gaze, which we learn at this point that Corlath, as the Hill King, has hill magic. And they call it Kellar. And it manifests as like anger.
Yeah.
And it's like a little terrifying, honestly. Yep. But people who have a lot of Kellar, like, it shows in their gaze, and their gaze is very fiery. And like, you can feel the rage of someone if you meet their gaze. And so the fact that Harry was able to like hold his gaze kind of speaks to Corlath, like, this is a weird one. But also as he's riding away, his magic is kind of like speaking to him in like a weird,
like a tap on the shoulder. And you like look around and there's no one there.
Yeah. Like, there's something about that girl. Why you need to go get that girl. And he's like, that's a fucking crime. No.
That's a felony?
Yeah. I'm not kidnapping a girl. Absolutely not. And then like a day later, go get the girl. No. A day later, you're going to go get that fucking girl right now. And
God damn it.
Fuck it.
He like throws the blankets off.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're like in the middle of the night and you're like, God damn it.
He summons his like most trusted rider. He's like, all right, we're going back to the village. I'm getting the girl. And they're like,
that's a felony.
Yeah, but like, okay, we know you're king and we know you've kidnapped women before, but like,
This doesn't feel like cute and sexy. This feels like crime.
Like, is she that pretty? Is she worth it? Like, there's plenty of other women.
And he's like, well, unfortunately, this tall monster on the hill is for me.
And it's not romantic. I just need to go get her. And so his writers are like, well, you're the king, so I guess we support you.
Okay. I love that they are giving sassy side-eye the entire time.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything, but their eyes are talking.
So Corlath, in the middle of the night, he rides back into the village. I love this scene because he's like, is the fucking magic going to cooperate with me or not? So it's the middle of the night. He rides up to the mansion and he puts his hand on the wall. And he's like, is this going to work or not? And sure enough, he's like, yep, the magic's cooperating. I'm going to walk through the wall. Casual. Like, I mean,
everybody can do it.
I feel like this was Robin McKinley at her finest. Like, is the magic going to work? Yeah, it's going to work.
I am the author. It is going to work.
Like, I don't need to think through the science or the explanations of this magic. Corlath is puzzled. It works. He walks through the walls. He sees Harry, who has finally collapsed into this insomniac nap on her window, and he scoops her up in his arms, and he carries her through the walls.
And then puts her on his horse like a sack of potatoes.
And they're off, riding into the desert.
Because I love the first thought that Harry has when she wakes up is like, I hope when I'm a little bit more awake that they let me ride on a horse instead of just being dragged across like a sack of potatoes. Like, give me a little bit of dignity, please. It's like, that's a fair reaction, but also very calm. They're very collected. Like, I think I would maybe have a little bit more panic.
Out. Yeah. But that's kind of where we end.
Yeah.
Is,
Girl was kidnapped.
So not a whole lot has happened.
No.
But this is a short book.
Yeah, because it's only like, what, 250?
240,
290,
250,
something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Digestible. Plus a kidnap. But she was so content. She's like,
I mean, if Corlath kidnapped me, sure, I'll fight.
Oh no, I'm just gonna sit here.
What a magnificent horse you have.
Kidnap me, Hill King.
Oh my God.
She was way too calm. Okay. That's my one beef.
Yep. So we will continue with Harry's journey across the desert with the Hill King next week. And
from our shelf to yours,
we will see you on the next page.
Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thanks for listening.
Bussin'.